Guess what? Sunday Sanctuary is produced by a non-profit, which makes perfect sense, right? And it's also quite fun because you never know where the money's going to come from. So this is your invitation to join that fun by supporting this kaupapa and helping to share something you love with even more people looking for soul-nourishing spiritual conversations. It's simple. You can choose between a one-off donation or become a regular supporter and help Sam and I keep making Sunday Sanctuary. To give now, head to our website, sundaysanctuary.nz. Kia ora, and thank you.
Maybe I can find my treasure. There's too much for me to do. Maybe I can find my treasure. Maybe my treasure rests in you.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
E ngā manu, e ngā reo, mai e ngā hau e whā, ta tū mai nei ki te manga o tēnei rā kau whakaruru hau. Tau mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa e pāpahu atu nei ki a koutua rā ko Sunday Sanctuary. Ko Petra Bagust tēnei, e rere ana ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. To everyone from each corner of this country, come, rest on the branch of this sheltered tree. You are welcome to this project, this space, Sunday Sanctuary. I'm Petra Bagust, and I acknowledge you all. Ooh, today's episode has been through a few iterations of title, and we've settled on Ugly by Design. Because the question I guess this episode asks is, are we living in an age that's ugly by design? Are we lacking in everyday beauty? And it was inspired by an article written by Andrew Shamy, who is, unsurprisingly, a writer. He's also a teacher and a learning experience designer. So as in where you learn and how you learn and the spaces you learn in will make a difference to that learning. So, yep, he's got a touch of the philosopher. And in his Substack called Imagining Otherwise, he wrote an article, The Museum of Lost Things, number 2. So this is part of a series. And this particular one caught our eye because it discusses the loss of everyday beauty. And we're going to throw that idea around with the author himself. And I guess I'm posing the question, what if we were at times, when appropriate, when possible, what if we could slow down and beauty up our lives? And how would we do that? How would we kind of pause or pace and then notice and appreciate beauty more? And what purpose does this beauty serve? Like, is it a nice to have? So I'm really looking forward to exploring this idea. And we'll also check in with architectural designer and tutor Abby Temby-Spence because she thinks about these things. Plus an excerpt from Nick Cave's Red Hand Files and, as per, some beautiful waiata and a few excellent pātai, some good questions. Let's kick our kōrero off now with Andrew Shamy. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've heard you described as a writer and a learning experience designer.
Sounds good to me, yes.
Do you like that kind of a thing? It feels like you are somebody who thinks deeply. Would that be fair to say?
I've been accused of that, yes. So, yeah.
So good.
Yeah, things are meaningful, and learning's important. So actually, you can make decisions that set people up to learn well. So that's exciting to look at. That's
very exciting. And you are the other half of a former guest of ours, Rachel Kitchens, who is a delightful human being.
Yes, I think so, yes.
And you know that better than us. The reason I am fortunate enough to be chatting with you today is that you wrote an article, because you're a writer, about the Museum of Lost Things, and I suspect it's a series. This was number 2. And the lost thing, your proposition of this article, the lost thing, is everyday beauty. And it's kicked off toward the top of the article with this fantastic meme that people may have seen of an incredibly ornately carved wooden cabinet or shelving unit, and then a melamine plastic coated box square, like a little open square, and it sort of says the furniture that our former generations inherited and the furniture I'll be leaving for my
Yes.
kids.
Yeah.
It's a goodie, right?
It says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about when you're writing an article like this, where you're grabbing an idea, a suspicion that you have or a wondering, and you start to roll it around inside your head? What's going on for you?
I think I'm trying to make sense of my own experiences and life. Often we experience things, or I experience things that don't immediately make sense to me. But there's a resonance, there's a depth, something's going on, and I want to make sense of it. So with that particular article, I'd seen that meme, and it made sense to me. I'm like, yeah, I can look around my own house, and there's that sort of furniture, although hopefully less of it than it needs to be. I had an experience last year in the UK going to the British Museum, and the thing that struck me was just how beautiful everything was. It's a British Museum. It's not a representative sample
of the average English home.
No, but humans have been obsessed with beauty and making beautiful things. And I found myself just wandering around in a type of daze and feeling inspired and in awe, but also a sense of loss. And thinking of my own life and the sort of houses I've lived in and the streets I walk around with, and feel like we've lost something. And so the article was me trying to make sense of that experience and that sense of loss and grief that was associated with it.
What do you think we've lost? What's your feeling leading you towards?
I think we have lost a regular, sort of normal encounter with everyday beauty. The flip side of that is I think we're surrounded by a lot of ugliness, almost an assault of ugliness on our senses all the time. We fill our homes with things that are poorly made, that are shoddy, they're not well designed, they're ugly.
But they're cheap.
They're cheap.
And we can buy lots of them.
We can. So we've gone for quantity over quality. That's a decision we've made. But even as we design cities, design homes, the question of should this be beautiful, we seem to have been answered with no. Beauty seems to be something that we've said is optional. It's a luxury item. And I'm just not convinced that's the choice other generations have made.
Okay, that's interesting. So this concept of then, what if beauty wasn't a luxury item? If it wasn't a luxury item, what is it?
I think, well, there's different ways to answer that. So let's look at it in layers. It seems to me, if you look historically at what we've made, the type of things you find in a museum, the history of art, is that beauty is very important to us. You go back 40,000 years to cave drawings, and we can still recognize those cave drawings as beautiful. So there is something about us as a species that desires beauty, has decided to fill our lives with beautiful things. So there's a natural desire, I think, for beauty that seems to be part of who we are. And in surrounding ourselves by ugliness, we're suppressing or distorting, I think, a desire. And that, I think, has consequences. What I talk about in the article is it's a type of, I call it spiritual nerve damage. I
thought that phrase was fantastic.
Yeah.
So is that the theory is that we're doing this to ourselves? We're causing ourselves spiritual nerve damage.
Yes. And in nerve damage, what I was trying to capture there is that I'm like, there's a sense in which we're not fully functioning, actually, and we're numbed, and yet we're sort of still feel these phantom pains. And I think that's because we were made to encounter beauty, and actually beauty is not an optional thing. It's not a luxury. So in the tradition I come from, a Christian tradition, an old way of talking about this is that sort of in the fabric of reality are goodness, truth, and beauty. That's sort of the building blocks of reality. So they're not,
beauty.
they're called the three transcendentals.
Nice.
They're not optional. They're just
They're not nice to have.
They're not nice to have.
They're not luxuries.
They don't even need justification. So we don't say, why do you want goodness? Or why do you want truth? Now, today we sometimes do say that about truth, but we don't need to justify wanting goodness or truth. Why did you do a good thing? That doesn't sort of make sense to us.
Why did you tell the truth?
Why did you tell the truth? Why would you do that? But we do with beauty. We put other things ahead of beauty. And I think there's a cost to that because it's not who we are. And I could say more about that, but I think I'm just trying to name my own experiences of living in a world and trying to be alive in a world where there is a lot of ugliness and not beauty.
Yeah, and look, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because we could have beauty and a distortion of beauty, truth and a distortion of truth, goodness and a distortion. But you can also have, there are layers. I looked at that meme with that, horrible square plasticish box that I would possibly have had by my bedside at some point from whatever, flat pack place I got it from. And I looked at that elaborate, incredibly designed and executed by craftspeople cabinet and thought, well, that would never have been my cabinet anyway. But if I think about a simple stool that I've seen with certain joints where there are no nails, but each joint is carved out, and then the piece of wood is positioned and inserted and hammered down, and the joint holds fast like a simple bench seat. There's true beauty to that, right? The craftsmanship of it, and there's some goodness to it, some solidity, and its simplicity, some beauty. So I thought, even with my that's an unfair example, I had to acknowledge that a really radically fair example would still prove true.
Totally. I think, again, one of the things in the museum I noticed were things that were made with old crafts that everyday people would have owned, had their own beauty to them because they were well made. And something that's well made out of natural materials carries some of the beauty of nature in with it, whereas, that sort of flat pack furniture is artificial material. It's useful and good, and the form has evolved over time to be fitting for purpose. And that's actually a feature of beauty. And so simple things, beautiful things don't have to be elaborate or expensive. They can be simple and well made. And your interaction with them is life-giving. And this is where beauty and goodness really do go together. They're hard to separate. There's something good about it, something true to that chair, and therefore there's something beautiful about it. So it isn't out of our reach. It isn't, again, a luxury item. But we've made choices to put the ability to make things quickly. We've put efficiency above beauty, cheaply above beauty.
Massively.
And we've made that choice, and I'm trying to name the costs, I think.
That's interesting, naming the cost, because I think, there's faux marble and there's faux everything, right? And it's like the idea might be that everybody can have the appearance of brass and marble and luxury fittings. They don't really last very long, though.
No. And this is why beauty is quite complex idea. So we're dealing with things here that we intuitively sort of recognize but hard to describe. It seems to be that when beauty parts company with goodness or truth, becomes sort of fake marble, it stops being genuinely beautiful. And it's quite a weird thing because it is, a fake plant actually can look almost the same as a real plant, and yet it lacks beauty. And I think it's because beauty is actually part of reality. It's woven in. And so when we're departing from natural products or goods, actually we're sort of stepping away. We're stepping away from truth and goodness, and the beauty begins to fade. That's just an interesting property of beauty.
That is interesting, the fact that they might have to cohabitate, truth, beauty and goodness, that for them to be really robust and resonant and and holding, sustaining somehow. They need to all be intertwined. Because I think about everyday beauty for myself now, and it's flowers and trees and plants. Like I walk around going, whoa, check out so many kinds of leaves. Like freaky. Like really insane. Or sunsets and sunrises. So there's this free beauty. But is it free? Because I live in a suburb that has trees in it. Like I live in a suburb where people can have gardens and have time to mostly tend to those gardens, right? So that's a luxury.
I think, though, part of what you're drawing out here is that our sense is beauty is everywhere. Part of the reason we're surrounded by everyday ugliness rather than everyday beauty is we're not paying attention. So most of us are on our phones or busy with life, and so we actually aren't paying attention to the everyday beauty that is just part of the natural world. And so I think you're right, certain suburbs have been designed and thought about to take advantage of those free beauties. But actually, a simple flower in a glass jar can be incredibly beautiful. On the drive here, I stopped at a light and I just saw a shadow playing on a factory wall. And the way the light was playing on that wall and interacting with the shadow was beautiful. That was free. So I think but I wasn't on my phone. I was concentrating, on the road, but also at a red light. I had time. I could pay attention. So part of it is what choices are we making about what we pay attention to. And I think there's a cost to not paying attention to beauty.
So being inattentive to our environments. Is there anything you want to say about this idea? Because I understand the concept of paying attention, like noticing what we pay attention to and then actually influencing what we pay attention to. Because our inattentiveness is still our attention, right? We're still inattentively scrolling or inattentively distracted. So to notice, I'm actually... This action or this focus isn't as life-giving. It isn't as true and beautiful and good as I think I need right now. You almost have to come back to the desire for truth and beauty and goodness, don't you? Like, what can we do to assuage or heal or impact in some way that spiritual nerve damage that you mentioned?
Yeah. That's a big question. I think lots of us are actually trying to figure that out. And I think because we sense that something has gone wrong, beauty, another way I like this phrase is beauty is the radiance of goodness and truth. So there's a sense in which actually beauty is a pathway here because we're attracted to it. Something grabs our attention that's beautiful and we pay attention to it. And often that thing is something that's good. That's true. So one of the costs of beauty is losing beauty is the good becomes less attractive. So how do we gain that? Well, I think most of us know the answer. We have to lay down our phones. But that works if there's something else we're picking up. And so for me, what I'm trying to do is fill my home with things that are beautiful. So I'm trying to get into the habit of reading poetry.
It's a good habit to get into.
Yeah.
Poetry's awesome.
And part of it is if I'm not going to be on my phone, I do need something. Music, actually just having it there to put on. Because I think we are bombarded with life. Life is stressful. Distraction sometimes has a purpose. And so our phones are doing that, but it's feeding us ugly things. So can we distract ourselves with beauty? Sometimes I have to force myself to go outside and just walk in the garden and pay attention. But what happens is it's rewarding. And I try to notice that. And I try to notice what happens in me, in my body, and in my spirit when I make those choices. And I try to remember that so that I make those choices again next time.
It's almost like you're somebody might say habit stacking, but you're laying down the reward And you're going, oh, look, I felt good. So you're noticing not only the beauty, but the goodness the beauty gives you.
Yeah, and part of you is that's the most human thing in the world, to do that. And so there's a sense of rightness to it. And so I think it's waking up. It's trying to wake ourselves up. And there are lots of distractions, and people are making money from the fact that we're not awake. And
I like also the fact that you're quite empathetic about the fact that we do need to be distracted as well, but we could distract ourselves and let us distract ourselves with beauty. Because I just heard recently, if somebody is suffering terribly and they can make space for the pain, but you can't sustain being in immense and deep pain and depression constantly, and to distract yourself with goodness or truth or beauty is a great idea. I think of the news now, the idea of a 24/7 news channel is quite an ugly concept for me personally. My humanity can't handle a 24/7 stream of bad news, and it has to be bad to make the news, pretty much, apart from that minute right at the end of an hour-long program, So there's this, wow, the onslaught of deprivation or death or distress or conflict, and it can end up twisting my sense of who humans are. So I think, it's a really healthy challenge to say, where might I look for or seek beauty, whether it's a taste, a smell, a touch, a remembering, could be a memory of somebody you love or somebody who loves you deeply.
There's such thing as moral beauty, and so part of what's happening is there's a moral ugliness that we're exposed to on the TV and the news. And so to find examples of moral beauty in your life, in your friends and your family and people you respect, and pay attention to their lives. Because we do say, we look at someone who's lived well and lived a good life and lived truly, and we say they've lived beautifully. And so I think that's another element of it. But absolutely, I think the modern world was not designed for us to flourish in. And I think for me it's been helpful to say, it's just not set up for flourishing. And I've got to make some choices if I want to live well. And I think beauty is you're encountering something outside of yourself. Beauty is not actually ultimately in the eye of the beholder. It's actually, again, it's part of the sort of fabric of reality. It draws us out of ourselves in healthy ways, and it draws us towards the good and the true. It's a type of radiance. And so that is the space I want to be. That's where there's life. And often the challenge is just to break that little hold of whatever is distracting me. Once I get into the poem or the cat in the sunshine or whatever it is, then I'm absorbed. It's the first step that I think is often so hard. I've found it quite liberating, and it is a bit weird, and it's sad that the world's not designed for us to live well and truly and beautifully, but it's not. And it's designed for some people to make enormous profits from our attention.
And discontent.
And our discontent.
Yeah, and our desire to be other than we are.
And those are all part of us.
Yeah.
Those are there.
Yeah.
They need channels.
Yeah.
But actually, I think there's old wisdom in other ways of being in the world.
Andrew Shamy, keep writing things down. What's the next Museum of Lost Things?
I'm going to write about festivity. You know those old village fairs where everyone is just in on something.
Yep.
And something's happening. I'm like, I feel I've lost that. So I want to write about that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Can't wait. Maybe we'll get you back for that.
All right. Well, thank you.
Cheers. Okay, so I confessed to Andrew Shamy at the end of our kōrero that I had in fact got a computer to read me his article because I was running late and unprepared. And so it was a really interesting concept to be delving into, this idea of paying attention and noticing and making sense of things, and yet to have kind of tried to imbibe his very interesting, fascinating whakairo in that way, in a kind of a very modern, hyper kind of in a sense of lack. I had a sense of lack. I've got a lack of time, a lack of space. I need to get this in so that I can get to the next thing. And I loved and appreciated what Andrew was saying about writing as a way of making sense of his feelings. So even as he's having thoughts and ideas, he's found kind of a beautiful expression of how to start to process those. For me, the idea of spiritual damage really resonates. Like, that is a concept that I'm like, oh, wow, I can see it. I can visualize it. So I'm fascinated by that. And the three transcendentals being truth, goodness, and beauty. I bandy those phrases around. Oh yeah, truth, goodness, and beauty, or beauty, truth, and goodness. Can I, inhabit them like a delicious flavor in my mouth and roll it around and taste it and see what I can, imbibe and absorb from that. If this is an episode that you think a friend might like to engage with or taste, then feel free to share it with them. We are at Sunday Sanctuary NZ on Instagram. Feel free to join our community, and we often pose questions and we love hearing from you. So, kia ora.
Breathe in, breathe out. Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Are you warm? Are you real? Mona Lisa. Are just a cold and lonely, lovely work of art. Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa.
That was a little bit of Mona Lisa by Nat King Cole. And in part, we chose that one just for the sheer beauty of his voice and obviously of what he's celebrating. Now time for a sacred text. Today we're drawing on Nick Cave's Red Hand File. This one is number 328, and it's Nick Cave's response to a fan's observation that yearning is part of the human condition.
Which brings me, Lindsay, to your observation, with which I completely agree. Yearning is, indeed, the essence of being human. We live our lives with a sense of incompleteness, of abandonment, a feeling of something lacking. This is the human predicament, as enacted in the Garden of Gethsemane, where at the final hour Christ prays for God's mercy, but finds that God has withdrawn, leaving him to his fate. This sense of godlessness, which my friends the atheists interpret as the non-existence of God, is, I believe, the supreme act of divine love. God allows us the freedom to be whatever we wish to be. The yearning you speak of, Lindsay, is the universal yearning for what is good, beautiful and true. We exist in this world and ache for this truth, for this beauty, in its seeming absence.
A breath of fresh air. Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
We've decided to light a candle and pose a couple of questions for you to think about. So as I open the lid, my kingdom candle, which is so fun. It's, let me tell you, blackberry and bay leaf. We are not sponsored by them, but I really like their candles. In your mind's eye, you can imagine what blackberry and bay leaf might smell like. All right, so I've lit the match. I'm lighting the wick of the candle. And the candle is lit. And I'm going to breathe in and breathe out. Hakiroto. Hakiwaho. And allow myself to slow and consider. Where can I conserve or add to the beauty of the world? Will And how might I maintain the rumour of God by resisting ugliness in the modern world? I hope you've taken a moment to have a think and allow thoughts to arise and either float away or settle. Now we come to the part of our episode where we reflect on the ancient practice of communion, a ritual established by Jesus with his followers the very night before he was executed. And when I think about it, there's something physically and morally really ugly about violence. It literally can make me squirm. I really hate seeing violence. I even hate violent movies when I know they're just actors and there's a makeup truck around the corner, which my husband often reminds me of. So when I think about how Christ was beaten, flogged and crucified, I can find myself physically repulsed. So for violence, something so distasteful, it's surprising how often we humans default to it. For example, the strong exerting their will over the weak. And I've heard people cynically satirise Christ's teaching as do unto others before they do unto you. So it's not simply physical. The might is right mentality pervades so many arenas of human history and even present-day politics. Power is abused time and time again for selfish gain, and it is ugly. So that night, Jesus gathered his friends for his final meal, and he showed them a different way to exercise power and authority. Even though he was their rabbi, he was above them, their teacher. He wrapped a towel around his waist, he bent down and he washed their dirty, smelly feet. Then he dried them with the towel. It was a beautiful act, morally. He followed it up by offering the bread and the wine as his body and blood, given freely. Then he faced his violent death with composure and compassion, even praying, Lord, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. He took what could have been just another brutal killing of a troublesome insurrectionist in a backwater of the Roman Empire, and he turned it into a selfless act of sacrifice. An act that was physically ugly, but morally beautiful, that defied the might of Rome and that has resonated for centuries. I think that's the kind of thing that Dostoevsky might have had in mind when he wrote that beauty will save the world. And now for a celebration of everyday beauty. This is the waiata, I Love My Leather Jacket by The Chills.
Jacket and I wear it all the time.
It's my joy now to introduce a woman I've had the pleasure of speaking to before on a podcast. Her name is Abby Temby-Spence, and she is an architectural designer and tutor of architectural design and theory at AUT. She is a maker of things, so craft-wise she works with textiles and quilting in an effort to connect even more with the women in her family, her whakapapa. Here's Abigail.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
As an architect and a tutor, and as somebody who's dealing with design all the time, what's your relationship to beauty and design?
Oh, okay. I want to split those into two different kind of areas, if I may. So, design. You can design experiences. You can design all sorts of things. But we're talking today, I think, about the design of physical objects. And design is not about solving a problem. Design is about caring for our everyday needs and doing it really well. So in Andrew's article, he talks about, how much is this to do with industrialization, urbanization, globalization? How much is that has contributed to the ugliness and the cheapness of a lot of physical objects? I'm trying really hard not to call them products because I want to push back on the inner reason, but the ugliness of physical objects. And he also said, perhaps ugliness is just the cost of feeding and clothing and housing 9 billion people. And I know he wouldn't actually believe that because we're not feeding, clothing, housing 9 billion people. We're doing a terrible job of it. So ugliness is obviously not contributing or helping with that. But if you see design as solving a problem, then you say, you need a chair. So here is a chair. And the quality of the chair is not as important because we're just trying to go, here's a problem, do we solve it? And the interesting thing that's happening at the same time is that in design we talk about the visual field, but basically it means the way things look is really important. So I've done this before. I've gone to shops where things are cheaper and I have wanted to tell a story about who I am so I can share this with the world in photographs, right? And you'll find this in people's houses. They'll have these occasional chairs that get called and they look absolutely stunning. No one ever sits on them because they're really, really uncomfortable. But the primary thing that they're serving is they look like a chair, but they're not actually acting like a chair. And so the physical object has become less important because it's not about how it cares for the people using it. It's about the story it's telling or how it looks. And so if it's about solving a problem, you need a chair. And then you want the chair cheaper, then you just make the chair cheaper and the quality becomes worse. If we weren't buying these cheap objects, then they would no longer be being made in such quantity. If we were prepared to wait and save for something that took more time and more care and the person who made it was paid appropriately, then that is what we would start seeing with our furniture shops. There would be less of them and there'd be less junky objects. Because I think there's this kind of dualistic thinking that comes into it where, the kind of Christianity I grew up with was that the physical world didn't matter. What really mattered was what you thought, kind of how you acted, that there was this kind of spiritual realm that was all important. Physical stuff's not important. And that kind of thinking has come into the way we treat objects. When we see objects as a status symbol or to tell a story, whether it's we're aware of the trends, so the new trend comes in and we want to replace everything, can't afford the most expensive stuff, so we get just cheap rip-off versions. We're diminishing that physical object. A chair, a stool, a cup, a door, whatever it is no longer about here I'm caring for you in your everyday life. It becomes I'm here to tell a story about you. And because they don't care for you the same way, the chairs aren't as comfortable, the furniture breaks, the picture of the flat pack, when Andrew contrasted that gorgeous, ornate, carved wardrobe versus the flat pack bedside table thing, these objects don't care for us and don't nourish us the same way. And part of, I think, what Andrew's talking about is we can physically sense when something doesn't care for us. When we sit in a chair that's not comfortable, or we keep a chair in our house that no one sits on and we hate, but we keep it because we want to impress people when they come over, we're not surrounding ourselves with physical objects that actually do what they need to do. You know, we are physical beings, and we need to sit in chairs that make us feel comfortable and relaxed. That's the chair's job. And when we insist on having a crappy thing, it can no longer do the caring and the nourishing for us as physical beings. And then in response, we don't feel any care for it. So it's really easy to give it away, replace it with something else. And that whole relationship between us as spiritual and like thinking beings, but in physical forms, it really messes up our relationship with physical objects. And so part of the ugliness is not only how it kind of looks, and that, I think that is a whole, I want to move on to that in a second. Part of the ugliness is we're not feeling the same sense of care from the spaces we're in. And I contrast that to times when I've been in batches, and often they're really humble spaces. And part of what I enjoy about a batch is it is not there to be on a cover of an architectural magazine. It is not there to impress anybody. It is there to make you feel good and to rest and to be still and to be quiet. And so sometimes when I am tempted to acquire something that I don't really need, and I ask myself questions like, if I think back to the batch, why do I want this? If no one ever saw this outside my home, does this make me feel nourished? Or is this more about me wanting to display, my amazing taste, or the fact that I'm up with trends? Or I don't know. If I'm making it about me, then I'm cheapening what is special about that object.
I like the idea of asking yourself the question, does this make me feel nourished? Like I love the orientation towards, is this caring for me? And if it is, therefore, there's a reciprocity to that, right? Like I might therefore care for the object that's caring for me. I really relate to, on holiday, I have a mug that a friend gave me, and that's my mug. Like it's half glazed and half not glazed, so there's a smoothness and a roughness to it, and the handle is just right. And I drink my coffee out of that mug and feel like there's this associations of holiday and relaxation and time for a good coffee in an unhurried space, usually outside in the garden. And so, there's something about that is very nourishing.
Yeah, and if it ever breaks, I imagine that you would look into ways to repair it, and maybe even ways to repair it, where you put that gold, so you join the two together, and then it's still the mug, and now it has the story of brokenness and repair, because that's another side to the ugliness, is that we don't want to repair ugly things.
No, we don't.
It also affects our ability to be generous, right? The difference between garage sales I used to go to as a kid and the sort of things coming up for sale on Trade Me Now is that there's so much of this flat pack stuff going around. And if life is hard and stressful, and it saddens me that the people who most need these little moments of beauty are being offered by those of us who pass on our objects, just items that have had no care in their making, that don't exude that care or nourishment to other people. So we can't be as generous in what we pass on if we are going out there and getting the poorly made things. And because I feel like as an op shopper, that's often an excuse, like, I can buy this thing because I'll just donate it to an op shop afterwards. But then if I'm not passing on quality, the difference in kind of quality of furniture and stuff in op shops is changing. And it's I think when it comes to beauty, because we're all different, some of us really love matching stuff. And sometimes some of us just love novelty, or we love difference and variation, right? I'm definitely one of those people. And there's ways to bring in kind of that variation and to appreciate them and to appreciate the beauty of different objects without having to go out and shop and buy for it. One of my friends, Karen, has a really huge dining table, and I think there's 12 chairs around the table. Every single one is different. Every single chair is made by a different artist or a maker. So he is an artist and a maker. And he says that his grandkids come and they all have their favourite chair that they like to sit in. There's just something kind of more personalised about it.
Yes, so fun.
Yeah, in our house we have lots of different cups and everyone's kind of got their favourite little cup.
I mean, I don't want to crucialise it all, but I think that there's this slowing down and noticing there's a very joyful experience for me in choosing a cup. What cup am I going to drink out of today? Or how does it feel in my hand? Or, yeah. And there's a push-pull for me. Like I just want the peace of everything matching, or I just want the joy of everything different.
And if we're thinking about it in terms of goodness and physical objects, there's definitely a point where we want stimulation. And I think sometimes that's when we're reaching for the different things. We want just stuff to be different. So sometimes I'll go and I'll swap out what's on a shelf with what's in a cupboard, trying to swap things rather than go out and shop for them. So I'm trying to pay more attention to myself and my own response to physical objects. So sometimes it's like, I think I need stimulation. And then going, do I really need it from physical objects? And sometimes it's just needing calm. And so this also plays into what you're talking about, because when it all gets overwhelming and it all gets too much, then the beauty we need is a really quiet kind of beauty.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's when people want to go and sort of change and buy new this and that, and it will make me feel calmer or better. But we probably just need to look for beauty in other places, like go for a walk, look at light coming through trees, listen to crunching leaves, paying attention to all those senses. Yeah, like if you can let it fill your beauty tank, because we need beauty. We need goodness. Yeah. Other side to that, of course, is that I do love the idea of repairing things or altering them or changing, the upcycling. Just sitting with something physical, I think, and working with it. That might be a way to reach back into older ways of being. I have found quite a bit of joy in changing things, or I want to learn to embroider. How hard can it be? I don't know. It's going to take some.
Yeah, how hard can it be? How much eyesight do you need? How much,
Yeah,
can do it back
but
then,
I love
surely
the idea of
yeah,
taking something and embroidering something a bit quirky or different or highly personal, because so much of the stuff that we buy from shops is we think so much about resale when the objects that I really, really love are highly specific, right? So highly specific to the shape of your hand. I'm lucky enough we own our house, so we are able to paint it. So in our house, there's no white walls. There's no white ceilings, actually. I said just take the colours straight up and over. So it's a pale green behind me is what you're seeing. Because I wanted my house to feel like mine. In a compromise, my husband didn't want like really dark colours, so we went for these soft blues and greens throughout the whole house. So no white walls, no white ceilings. It feels uniquely ours. If we were ever going to sell it, someone else can paint it.
We could talk about beauty forever, but I really thank you for the thinking that you've done, and just this idea that imbibing the joy of physical things and asking ourselves if what we're engaging with physically is nourishing us. I think those are two excellent partai, great questions. So, Abigail, ngā mihi nui kia koe. Thank you.
Oh, ngā mihi nui, thank you.
For me, this episode has delivered. I really like the fact that we've got, I would say, a kete, a basket full of partai questions that we can pluck out and use at different times. And the questions that I'm going to take from the kōrero inside of this Sunday Sanctuary are, what everyday need is being met by my desire to own or acquire this object? I might ask myself that before I feel the urge to buy or purchase. I might say, What need is this object trying to fill or satisfy? Can I notice or share the beauty of this thing and then move on? Could I take a photo and share it with a friend? I might also ask of the objects around my house and in my life, how are they nourishing me? And when I feel the need to grab something more or new, I might go, am I in need of stimulus here, or am I in need of peace? Because that underlying desire and the ability to satisfy that could work out to be a very beautiful thing indeed. I'm going to leave you today with a poem that I wrote that has the relatively ugly title of Lub-Dub, which I believe is the way the heartbeat is described by medicine. When does beauty fail? When did I stop jotting poems on paper in pockets to be found later? When? When did my inbox clog up, grow to a monster that needed an answer or 68? When? When did I swap reading for scrolling and Apple Pay purchases 2 clicks from a shiny new something that will last for a photo moment celebration of novel, and now, hey, look at me. It is quick and delivered. Who needs a lifetime of beauty from everyday objects? When do I breathe deep, turn away, slow into a space that has rhythm, healthy heartbeat rhythm, lub-dub, 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 splish, splash, splosh around in here, pull a poem from my ear or heart cavity. Beautiful blood pumping through my veins, spreading everyday life everywhere when beauty prevails.